Today I'll be reviewing and talking about a book, and that book is Replica by Lauren Oliver. I'm sure you've heard of this. It came out a year ago and I'm just now getting to read it, unfortunately, because I am just a horrible person. Either way, I read it and I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to film a review slash talk to you guys about it because this is a unique book. If you haven't heard about this book is dual narrative, and it's more than dual narrative, it's a unique reading experience. You have two different sides. You have Gemma's side, which half the book is Gemma's point of view, or you can flip it to Lyra's side, which again, it's half the book and it's Lyra's side. So this book is meant to be read however you see fit. Lauren Oliver herself said there's no really wrong way to read this book. However you want to read it is the way you're going to read it. So either you can read Gemma's side of the book first and then you can flip over to Lyra's, or you could, read Lyra's and then switch it over to Gemma, or you can read it in alternating chapters, switching from Gemma to Lyra, or you can, take 5 chapters of Lyra and then read 5 chapters of Gemma, whatever you want to do. There's literally a ton of ways to read this book. I'm going to share with you how I read this book. Before I do, I'm going to tell you what this book is about. This is the first book in a sci-fi series. I don't know if it's a duology or a trilogy. I never really know that. I do know the sequel to it called Helix is coming out in October, so I know for sure there's a second book. I don't know if that's the last book or if it's going to be a trilogy or a series, so forgive me if you know the answer to that. Let me know down below. This follows, like I said, 2 points of view. We have Gemma and then we have Lyra. So let's talk about Gemma's first. Gemma is an ordinary average girl. She gets picked on a lot at school. She has one best friend that she's really close with, and her family life is kind of in a disarray and things just aren't really going well for her. She was sick a lot when she was a baby, so her mom really kind of keeps her on a tight leash of what she can and can't do because they're really worried for her. Throughout the midst of all this, she learns that her father is involved with this facility called Haven where something is going down. She can't quite figure out what, something scientific, something involving military. She sets out on a mission to figure out what is going on in this facility and how she has to do with it because things are happening a little bit. So that's all of Gemma's point of view and what's going on with Gemma. And then we have Lyra, or Lyra. I don't know how you pronounce that. We have Lyra's point of view. She is actually living in the facility that Gemma we're flipping this a lot, that Gemma is actually currently researching. Lyra has lived here her whole life. She is a replica, hence the name of the book. She is a clone, and that's all she's ever known. So we learn about what's in the facility on her side of the book and how she's came to be and what exactly they do in this facility. It's no spoiler to say these two characters' stories intertwine in this book, and that is what this whole gist of the book is about. It's a sci-fi element with clones and replica and really talking about how far we should really test science and what are the limits of making a human a human? Should we actually have clones? Should we make clones? It's all about questioning science and whether or not clones and what makes a human really a human. Well, like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I'm kind of mad at myself that it took me so long to read it because I even interviewed Lauren Oliver about this book and I still have yet to read it. I'm a horrible person. The way I read this book, and like I said, there is no wrong way to read this book. Really, honestly, read it however you see fit. The way I read it, in case you were wondering, is I started out with Gemma's side and I read about 5 to 6 chapters of Gemma's sides. Then I flipped it over to Lyra's side, which by the way, it's Lyra, not Lyra. Sorry I pronounced that wrong the whole time. I just looked it up. It's Lyra, so apologies. Then I would switch over to Lyra's side and I would read about 5 to 6 chapters of hers. Now sometimes I would read a chapter more of Gemma's side and then I would read a chapter more of Lyra's side. Now I was planning to read it chapter at a time, but I realized how much I would have to flip over this book, which can get annoying. Like I said, I was only switching about 5 to 6 chapters. I want to say there's about 16 to 17 different chapters on each side. On Gemma's side, she has 18 chapters. On Lyra's side, she has 17 chapters, so 1 chapter less than Gemma. So, I guess technically if you could say I probably flipped it over about 5 or 6 times. 5 or 6 times I switched it, which isn't a lot, but it is kind of frustrating flipping back and forth. So I would not honestly recommend doing chapter to chapter. You are gonna get so sick of flipping back and forth. I only flipped this thing 7 times and I was still kind of sick of it, and it wasn't a ton. Either way, there's no wrong way to read this book. I just read it kind of 5 to 6 chapters at a time. If you have read this book, let me know how you read it. Did you read chapter to chapter? Did you read Lyra's side first and then go over to Gemma's, or how you read it? As far as these stories flowing together, the whole premise of this whole point of this book is that you can honestly read chapter to chapter and their stories of these two main characters are supposed to sync up. They're supposed to be ever flowing, very, very cohesive. Do I think that happened? Yes, I did. I found the story very, very cohesive. I cannot imagine the amount of time that Lauren Oliver took on this book to make everything ebb and flow perfectly, because it really was perfect. You found out everything perfectly on each side, and it was kind of interlocking. You found out everything you needed to know within certain pages. There are a few scenes that are kind of overlapping within between these two girls' perspectives. That's only because they do share some scenes together, so there are going to be a few overlapping scenes, but I thought there was going to be a ton more, and there wasn't. There was only a few. You really honestly got to see both of these girls' sides of stories like completely different. And I love how even though they are such different characters, the book just flows together so nicely. And I love how it's kind of a flip narrative. You can really immerse yourself in each girl's story. And you know, I like it better than what it would be like if they did one chapter, like if it was a traditional book and it had one chapter of Gemma and one chapter of Lyra. I like this much better because I think it's fun, and I think it just flowed so much better because of the fact that you really got to sink into each girl's individual story. I'll say Lyra's side is more interesting. The fact that she's a human replica, it makes it much more interesting, but I really enjoyed Gemma's side as well. I will say Gemma kind of annoyed me at some parts because she's got some insecurities, and I understand that, but I felt like they were just really elaborated on a lot in this book, and I was like, we get it. We get it. But I did really like her style as well. There are two love interests in this book for each of the two main characters. I don't think neither of them was necessary. Like, I wasn't really like super happy about them, but I don't hate them by any means. I understand it because love interests are very common in YA. However, if there were no love interest in it, I would find it just as interesting. Not super in love with the romance in this book, but I don't hate it, and I can see how it does add to the story. You know, you know, you have a character there that these two girls can vent to and really express their feelings and help move the book along. So overall, would I recommend this book? Yes, I would. I found it very, very intriguing. I just love the whole premise of like a dual narrative where you have to flip over to see individual sides. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. Like I said, I really enjoyed it, and it was very fast paced. At no time was I bored while reading this book. I was really curious to see what was going to happen next and what was going to throw me for a loop. I will say it's very predictable. I don't think you're going to be like super shocked by anything. You can kind of see things coming, which I don't hate at all really, but because I'm horrible at predicting things, but I did predict this one, and I think it's easily predictable, but that's not like a point away from taking it or anything like that. Oh, I also should show you the actual, so you get 2 colors on each side obviously, but then if you take the dust jacket off that actually has the colors on it, open it up, and it's like this beautiful butterfly. Look at that. It's stunning. I kind of like this more than the colors. It's a beautiful book. It really is. Either way, I really enjoyed this. I'm so mad at myself for not picking this up sooner because it was such a good sci-fi book, because I don't read too many sci-fi books and I really need to remedy that. If you have read this book, let me know your thoughts and opinions on it. Tell me how you read it. Did you read it alternating chapters? Did you read one side completely first and the other side? Let me know if you enjoyed it as well, and you know, let me know your thoughts and opinions and what's going to happen in the second book, because I will definitely be reading it come October, because I don't want to wait a year like I did for this one. I can't. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.